Greetings viewer, this week you join me aboard the facelifted BMW 530e, based on the latest generation of the 5 Series, the G30. The plug-in hybrid powertrain makes 288 horsepower and 430 Newton meters of torque. This is enough to send this almost 2-ton car to 100 kilometers per hour in under 6 seconds, and it feels very muscular in gear. The system pairs a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that makes about 180 horsepower and is the unit from the 520i or 320i or any 20i BMW, supplemented by a 100 plus horsepower electric motor that is built into the gearbox. And you can drive it on electric power alone up to 130 kilometers per hour. So even if your daily commute takes you on a faster road, if you have the possibility to charge at home, maybe you can reach your destination, your workplace or whatever, without really starting the gas engine. Again, I'm going to say what I always say about plug-in hybrids. If you cannot commit to regularly charging the car, just avoid the plug-in hybrid. It's not for everyone. For those select few who are diligent enough to remember to charge it, then it will return like 2 and a bit liters per 100 kilometers, as BMW claims, and like 40 something grams per kilometer CO2 emissions, which is ridiculous for a car this big. But there's obviously a big asterisk attached to that. Charge it. With the facelift, BMW also increased the battery capacity of this plug-in hybrid 530e from 9.2 kilowatt hours to 12 kilowatt hours, although I think there was an intermediate model on the pre-facelift version of this car that had 10 kilowatt hours. Usable capacity of this new 12 kilowatt hour battery pack is actually around 10 and a bit kilowatt hours. And even though BMW says you can even exceed 50 kilometers on electricity alone with a full charge of the battery, that's obviously not true. And the EPA rating in America is much more accurate and true to life. It predicts that you can do around 20 miles on electricity alone in the rear-wheel drive model, or 18 miles in the all-wheel drive version, which is what I'm driving today. That translates into just over 30 kilometers and just under 30 kilometers. And I think that is a very fair assessment of its actual real-world range. Yesterday, I did a range test for Inside EVs, where I took this car with a full battery and drove it on first on the highway at a constant 70 miles per hour, or around 112 kilometers per hour. And even though temperature was around freezing, today is quite a bit warmer, I still managed to achieve almost 33 kilometers of range on the highway, driven constantly at 70 miles an hour. Then I charged the battery back up again and performed the same test, only in town, in a very congested town on small streets, and I actually got around 25-26 kilometers of range. The battery of this plug-in hybrid 5 Series lives somewhere behind the rear axle, and it also intrudes on trunk space, which is reduced by 100 or so liters to 410 liters. Immediately upon opening the trunk lid, you notice that this 530e trunk is noticeably shallower than a 530i trunk. And speaking of differences between this and the 530i, it is worth noting that the battery adds extra weight. So a 530i with rear-wheel drive tips the scales at 1707 kilograms, whereas the 530e with rear-wheel drive, that's over 200 kilos heavier. It weighs around 1914 kilos. For examples equipped with xDrive, like my tester today, the weight goes up to 1,959 kilos. My honest opinion about this car is that you shouldn't go for the xDrive unless you really live in a place where the climate is harsher, let's say, and it snows and it's cold for a longer period of the year. The top speed is limited to 130 miles per hour, but you can pay BMW to have the limiter removed, and then the car will go all the way up to 235 kilometers per hour, or 146 miles per hour. The base price for one of these in Romania is 58,846 euros. If you want xDrive, that bumps the price up to 61,464 euros. But this tester costs over 92,000 euros. I got to experience this same powertrain in two other cars, in a 330e that was only rear-wheel drive, and in an X3 that was all-wheel drive. And I think even though the 3 Series impressed me with its performance and just how quick this powertrain made it feel, and just how easily I was able to drift it around corners and stuff, I think that the muscular electric shove of this electrified powertrain really suits this bigger, more luxurious, more plush car very well. This car does come with adaptive dampers, and I have to say it is remarkably comfortable. Put it in hybrid mode, which is the equivalent to comfort mode in all of BMW's electrified models, and it just glides over bumps. This example also has rear wheel steering, so it's very maneuverable, and the result is a very fuss-free driving experience. You don't really feel the imperfections in the road that much. You don't have to steer too much to go around obstacles. You don't have to press the gas too much to make the car shoot off towards the horizon. It makes a lot of sense. And since the BMW 5 Series is not the kind of car you really buy to attack a twisty road in, I think the fact that this car is like 200 kilos heavier than an equivalent 530i is less relevant and less important in this case. It still handles really, really well, although you cannot escape its almost 2-ton weight. It is perfectly balanced though through corners. Just know that you cannot rely on the brakes mainly as much as you can in the lighter, more nimble 530i. It just seems to take that little bit longer to stop. Okay, so we're going to go over a very bumpy railway crossing now. Let's see how much this moves me, literally, I mean. That's very comfortable. Like for real, that's super comfortable for a car that doesn't have air suspension. I have to say that I'm a huge fan of adaptive dampers. Sure, they add to the maintenance cost over time if you own a car that has them equipped for a larger number of years. You will eventually have to replace them, and they are expensive. Quality dampers are hugely expensive, and if you add the adaptive thing to them, it makes them even more so. Although you don't have to buy OEM dampers, you can find very good, competent aftermarket solutions. Maybe that they are superior technically to the OEM solution, and they cost the same or maybe even less. But I really think that you should specify adaptive dampers on any car that offers them. It is a driving experience changing option that you should totally tick. I honestly think that this 530e is at its best when you're just cruising around in hybrid mode or electric mode, when it's super quiet and super refined, and it's just a serene experience, especially with these optional seats that also have a massaging function, and this headrest that you can adjust so that you're really, really comfortable. It's really enjoyable to just cruise around in this car. Not so much hoon it, although it can take some hoonage, definitely. I must mention the fact that I wasn't the biggest fan of this car's pre-facelift look. It was a nicely proportioned car, but I wasn't a fan of either of its fascias. However, with the facelift now, I think it's a much sleeker and nicer looking car, especially the front lights. I really, really like those. Those completely change the character of the car. And I actually think this car has one of the most aggressive front fascias of any BMW. Even if you don't specify the sportier M exterior design pack. With the facelift, BMW also increased the size of its center infotainment screen, which is one of the best on the market. There's hardly anything to criticize about it. It really works beautifully well. It never lags. The graphics are super sharp and pleasant. It has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are wireless. So that's very good. One thing I did notice, back in 2015, I think it was, when I first saw BMW's 3D around view system that shows a 3D model of the car, and it tries to generate the surroundings based on what it sees through its surround view camera system, and it looked good for 2015. However, now other manufacturers offer similar systems. Yeah, they were inspired by BMW's, but they have moved the game on. The BMW system stretches the image as it gets closer to the edge of its field of view. It looks kind of weird and comical. Not necessarily in a good way, but it can be distracting even. But other than that, there is little to fault about this screen. I think it's 12.3 inches. I could be wrong, but I think it's 12.3 inches. So yeah, that pretty much sums things up. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like it and subscribe to the channel, and take care.